Here we have some introduce for you to prepare before you start to purchasing the reagent. You must read the MSDS, the safety data sheet, to understand the property of the chemicals you are going to buy, and especially pay attention to the handling and the storage and the stability and the reactivity. The chemicals property must be very clearly understood. So we recommended that you can separate your reagent in different groups, like one we are cited here, and use the standard reagent cabinet that fabricate follow the OSHA standard. But of course, most of the time, if our lab condition is not spot to be reach to the standard of the cabinet, or you don't have enough budget to purchasing the standard cabinet, you have to use the common cabinet. But you must be considered safety first, of course. Like you cannot put the flammable reagent near the sparkles or the place that easy to have static electrodes, or you cannot put the oxidation reagent close to the flammable reagent. Of course, you can also not mix the different property reagent and put them in the same chambers. So this is at least you can do if you don't have enough budget. You can keep your reagent in dry and dark place. And the most important is you must clearly know the property of your reagent and put them in separate group. And the most important, we will introduce some about the sensitive reagents that you have to be applied. Like sometimes you have buy the reagent and you found that the bottle was marked as keeping dry and keeping dark, or keeping protect with nitrogen. It means your chemicals or your reagent are sensitive to your surroundings. Especially when we are in Malaysia, we all know Malaysia condition is high humidity, and our latitude is low, so our oxygen is higher, and the most important is the humidity is very high. So that is very difficult for us to handle the reagent when they are sensitive to water. So you must be carefully read the label that on the packing to see whether your chemicals will face the problem, have water or humidity sensitive or air sensitive. Need to be considered how to transfer them before you handle the reagent. First, if they are liquid, you can use nitrogen to plug in the liquid out. Of course, this operation can be handled by calibration your container, or you can use volume indicated syringe. If you need more about this, how to transfer the liquid reagent, you can call us. And for the solid, it's much more difficult compared with liquid, because it's not a kind of fluid. You can control the flow and to control the amount by the flow, but for solid it's much more difficult. So you cannot expose your reagent long term under the air. That will be lead for the humidity influence. So you can handle the weight with a lid covered weight bottle with a different method. Means you are roughly put a tip of reagent in one container, then you decrease the extra one to keep the amount that you needed. So it's very important that you have good experience to roughly keep the reagent in the waiting bottle, otherwise you will waste a lot of chemicals that you have. So this is how to handle solid. And of course, if you want to keep them being stored properly, you can put in desiccator and vacuum desiccator, keep in fridge, follow the temperature inquiries, bring in with nitrogen by protection. And if you have glove box, it will be much better that you handle the waiting inside the glove box, that you will not face the problem as you wait the chemical sensitive chemicals outside. That will be much helpful, but most of the time we don't have glove box that can be applied, so you still have to refer back to how to wait the chemicals by the difference method. Here is some kind of keeping property and the device that you may require during your storage. And so we will use dopamine hydrochloride as example. When you got these chemicals, you will find on the label it have marked with like store condition required, keep in 2 to 8 source degrees, put in dry and dark, seal and with nitrogen protection. That means these chemicals are very high, is temperature sensitive. It may affect by the temperature, so you have to put it in refrigerator. It's first time based on the temperature it's indicated, and put in dark. That means these chemicals is sunlight sensitivity, so you must keep in dark. Keep in dark, you can use amber bottle. This is already have, and wrapped it with aluminum foil if necessary to do so, and seal pack. That means these chemicals also humidity sensitive, so you have to consider about whether the humidity is affect a lot, whether it's absorb more water, and to make your weight being influenced during the waiting process, whether you have to use different method and weight them in waiting bottle. And for the nitrogen protection, that means these chemicals is also with air sensitivities. So when you use these chemicals, you not only need to be consider how to keep the chemicals properly, but also have to be considered when you apply this one as a reagent, whether the other reagent with mixture with these chemicals also have to be treated, like the solvent you are using, whether it need to be removed humidity by a special method to decrease the water content inside the solvent. It must be considered. And also the procedure of the reaction, whether you have to be use a kind of nitrogen protection, or you need to, whether necessary, you have to be considered to use silicon line to conduct the reaction. If you have such kind of problem, you can consult with us. And you go to the bottle. First, you have to consider is your application amount. If your application amount is small, you better buy small packing. For example, you can buy 2 bottles of 10 gram. If you need is 20, or if you can buy 4 bottles of 10 gram packing, comparing with you buy a 50 gram in 1 pack. That can forbid you to be frequently open the seal of the original packing. Of course, you can also do is you can separate the packing at the beginning to make its packing is using for 2 or 3 times. Then can forbid to frequently open the pack to lead to water or oxygen into the reagent bottle to make a contamination or reaction inside the reaction bottle. But this you also be consider about your instrument and also your operation experience, whether your student have familiar with the operation or whether they can finish the packing in quite fast way. If they cannot do so, it can be ignore this, just keep in the original bottle to forbid mistake operation. Then for the protection with nitrogen, if it's not easy to purge nitrogen, you can also keep them on the vacuum. So if you have a desiccator, you can put the reagent inside the desiccator and put them with a dryer like molecule sieves, like silica gels indicators. Of course, if you don't have such kind of desiccator, you can also buy a lock that with a good seal from the daily use shop. Can put the dryer like molecule sieves or the silica gel indicator inside the lock containers and put your reagent inside the lock box before you put them into fridge. In Malaysia, you'll be always find when you take a container from the refrigerator and suddenly the whole container will be covered by a layer of water. That is because our room humidity is normally 80%, 90%. So when a cold container is being taken out to room temperature, it will condense the surrounding water in very fast way. So before you open the container, it's better you keep the reagent in room temperature for some while. Then you wipe the water that beside the locking containers or the desiccator. Only after that you take your reagent out and wet it. So it will be better if you have 2 or 3 containers or desiccators that you take one small packing and put the reagent inside the desiccator to let it to be warm up until room temperature, then only start to wait. Of course, if you have a glass box, you can do this inside the glass box, that you don't need to be considered about the water condensed from outside. But mostly we don't have glass box, so we have to be considered about the surrounding influence. Then you weight your materials and return your chemicals back into the container. If you don't have a vacuum desiccator, you can plug in some nitrogen into the container before you lock it, then put them in the fridge. Here's have a book for you to recommend to read, like if you have to be purified your solvent, like this time you are using a DMAC. DMAC is very sensitive to absorb water. If you have that reagent is sensitive to water, but you have to use DMAC as a solvent, maybe you have to consider to remove the water content into lower level before you use it as a solvent. That means you cannot use the solvent directly after you purchase it, but you have to do some treatment. Then you can find how to treat the solvent from this book. Any version is okay. And also you may need to be considered to do the reaction under the sink line that can conduct reaction under high water sensitivity and air sensitivities. If any problem, you can call us back.